Hey, it's Will here, Handle Guardian Fury. Um, I just, this will be video number two. My last video just cut out right after I was talking about my mother, telling me to go live with my non believing father, and because she realized that the abuse was still happening, finally. And so I would not leave. She seemed to understand on a motherly and instinctual level that something wasn't right. Um, I'm not sure exactly what the story is with that. So, because I'm protecting my mother and my sisters, I mentioned that I was using my body as a bargaining chip with my Jehovah's Witness stepfather because um, I had to do something to protect my my family, and it was the only thing that I knew how to do. I'd already outed him and already been ordered, according to God. That would be them claiming to speak for God. I had already been ordered to go back to the man, to living with him. So I didn't know what else I had to do. I could do. Anyway, so at the age of 15, um, a little while after this talk with me that she's trying to get me to leave to go live with my real father, who she's been her and my stepfather been telling my whole life was the devil incarnate. So one Sunday morning, my mother just turns the wrong way on the highway. Instead of taking a left, she takes a right, and we leave Texas with the clothes on our back. She finally realized that she was supposed to protect her children. A few years late, but whatever. At least she did it. And we made our way back to Maine over the next week or so. And at 15, again, we're on this trip. Going back, we stopped in Scranton, Pennsylvania, on the way back to Maine at my aunt's house. Uh, there was much drama as my aunt and her Jehovah's Witness elder husband, who was maybe 15 years younger than her. Big surprise there again. Seeing a, you see a pattern there yet? Go figure. So this elder Dick and my aunt were very mad at my mother for having left my stepfather, and they tried to order and force us to go back to live with my stepfather. Thankfully, my mother didn't listen and carry through on her plan to move us back to Maine and to away from the animal that she was married to. So again, at 15, we get back to Maine and stayed at uh, my grandparents' house, and then shortly after that, at a government-provided trailer in the woods. That's up in Maine. Then at 15, 16, my grandfather had been teaching me woodworking off and on throughout my life, and when we got back to Maine, it really that's all I did at first, really. So he's teaching me woodworking, anything from toy making up to cabinet making. Again, my grandparents were not Jehovah's Witnesses. From the ages of 14 to 16, I also was a pioneer. As soon as I was baptized, um, I was officially a pioneer, and that was 90 hours a month at the time. So a minimum 90 hours a month I spent knocking on doors from the ages of 14 to 16. At the age of 16, I really start to enjoy public speaking in the Theocratic Ministry School. I I was giving at least one little talk, a little mini speech a week. Uh, and some weeks I was even giving two in the same night. I was picking up any talks that people were no shows. Um, I just would pick them up because I really enjoyed the Bible research. I really enjoyed. I just got to the point really I liked doing it and I was good at it. And so at least once a week I was given a little mini sermon at the age of 16. Let's see. Also, at the age of 16, I began to have a passion for research of older publications and Bible reading and studying, and even using the corrupted JW Bible. I began to prove that the JW literature was wrong. When I would show my mother biblically that something in the latest magazine, the Watchtower, was opposite from what the Bible said, she would tell me to trust in Jehovah and to wait on him. Never mind that supposedly Jehovah had provided this Bible, so I'm supposed to wait on him even though he's already giving me the tool to prove that the Watchtower is opposing him. Go figure that one. The cognitive dissonance was amazing to observe in her. My mother was very clear and directive that I was not to bring it up to the congregation leadership or discuss with anyone or show anyone what the Bible had to say. I was not to run ahead of Jehovah, and I needed to pray more and trust in him. She could not believe the JW literature to be a lie. Now, on that note, I was very naive at the time, of course. I didn't realize that I could potentially get in trouble for questioning what was in the magazines. And it was obvious by this little point that my mother understood the danger I would be in if I started using the JW Bible to prove the JW literature wrong. Anyway, again, at 16, the more discrepancies I found, the more passion I had for Bible study and research. I began to use their version of the Bible more and more in my talks, to where I hardly was preaching JW doctrine. I just presented the scripture and tried to make it interesting and get the audience to think about how it fit with their life experience. So I, less and less I was using their magazines, their books, their bound volumes. Less and less I was using their dogma to present what the Bible had to say. Anyway, so I kind of got my notes out of order just a little bit here. So again, at the age of 16, I was pioneering, leading most field ministry meetings I attended, because there weren't many males out pioneering. It was mostly sisters and older sisters. I was homeschooling myself for high school. I was still, going to the gym, putting on muscle with bodybuilding. It's kind of funny that due to my size and just maturity level, to backtrack, and down in Texas, um, when we first got there was nobody close to my age. We got there. I turned 13 a little bit after we got there, and the next oldest person to me was like 30 years old. And then, of course, at 14, I'm out of public school. I'm working full time, and again, I don't have anyone to associate with my own age. So I grew up not only from the abuse, but from the situation. I was much older than um, my actual age. So I say, due to my size and my maturity level, most people thought I was at least in my 20s. So, kind of funny story. When we attended our first meeting when we got back to Maine after leaving Texas, in that congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, the elders thought that I was married to my mother because of, my shirt was a little bit tight fitting because it's hard to keep a growing teenager in clothes as it is, but then a bodybuilding one, and it's even harder. And so my shirt sleeves, it was hard to find shirt sleeves that fit for me at the time. Everything was a little bit tight. And so because of that, they thought that my mother had married a much younger Jehovah's Witness male. Big surprise there, isn't it? Big surprise there. And of course, I quickly told them that it was my mother and that I was only yeah, 15. Yeah, I think we got there. I think it was 15. So sorry about that. I'm kind of like stopping here. I don't mean to have pauses. Uh, so okay. So then at the age of 16, as I was starting to make some money with cabinet making with my grandfather's wood shop. As he was teaching me woodworking. Um, in the winter when they went down to Florida, I would take over and I'd run the shop for him in the winter. And I had multiple Bible studies also out in the field ministry. Uh, I was starting to have huge disagreements and arguments with my mother about finances. I made some money woodworking, but I'd only just started to build up any clients. And what money I made, I shared with the family. My mother was collecting welfare, and we were on food stamps, and I believe that to be falsely collecting that. She was working the system. She managed to claim she could not work due to some injury or other, and she and the state believed her, and the government believed her, and she would spend no less than 110 hours a month out in field service. The requirement was 90 hours, but uh, I distinctly remember she always spent about 110 hours in the field service a month. Yet, according to the government, she would tell them that she was physically unable to get a job. To this day, we, the taxpayers, support her. She has not contributed at all. She has lived off of welfare since leaving. Initially, after leaving my father, and then after that, when she left my stepfather, again, she's been on welfare since then, since I was 15 years of age, and she finally decided to leave my rapist and not share a bed with him. After doing so for years, she has been on welfare since then, and for much of that time was full time pioneering and far exceeding the amount of hours required for pioneering. And that was some of the biggest fights that I had with her. I could not reconcile that the government was supposed to be run by Satan, and yet she was lying to get free money and refusing to work. She justified it as working for Jehovah, of course, and to this day it pisses me off. JW organization was supposed to be pure, not justifying lying and thievery. I did more work than her. I worked more than her. I provided for our family more than she did at the age of 15 and 16. So at the age of 16, the JW House of Cards comes falling down around me. I saw the unbiblical hypocrisy of how they viewed worldly people, of which Jesus would have been hanging out with. I saw the false doctrines and could prove biblically many things wrong, and I knew that I was no prophet. Yet these men in New York had a direct line to God and printed biblical lies. And to this day, of course, my mother being in the cult and fully programmed, fully indoctrinated, she still can't comprehend. She can't understand. The cognitive dissonance is strong, right? Uh, if they've changed the theology, or if they have something in a magazine that's just come out and it's supposed to be from God, there's no such thing as new light in the Bible. We know that. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't know that. The Jehovah's Witness leadership knows there's no new light. They know that even the devil appears as an angel of light. And I couldn't if I can prove one small thing wrong consistently, I'm seeing proving small things wrong, and never mind the big thing. If I can prove small things wrong, that in itself proves that it's a false religion. because they're claiming to have a direct line to God. They're claiming to be this faithful servant that God is talking to, and it's God's message being delivered through them. Yet, if it's a lie, if something's wrong, if it's not proper, if it's not biblical, then that's a false prophet. I mean, pretty simple. I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure, for most people watching this. Anyway, so at 16, we're back up in Maine, and um, my my father finds out. I'm pretty sure it was my grandmother again. My father finds out that we are back up in Maine, and so he comes for a visit in September of '95, and we had been back in Maine a little over a year by that point, or about a year, give or take. And so we saw him and my stepmother, who is mom to me now, for about a week. And that's when I saw my out. After he dropped us back off with my mother, I went into action. Uh, so at 16, again, I made it abundantly clear to my mother that I was going to move in with my father and stepmother. She fought it much less than I thought she would. I did get some marriage night details from my mother that no mother should ever tell her son, in a very strange attempt to convince me that he was a bad person because he had sex before they were married. Again, they had sex before they were married. Somehow this is supposed to convince me that he's a bad person and I shouldn't go live with him. I didn't want the details either. She gave me so many details that it was like a horrible comedy, a horrible Greek tragedy to watch this unfold. So, of course, she calls an emergency meeting with the elders. So again, here I'm 16 years old. I have an emergency meeting with three elders the day after I tell my mother that I'm leaving. And these elders try to scare me into staying with my mother. They, of course, they tell me that I'm going to die at Armageddon if I move, and that it was a sure thing, that there was no way that I wasn't going to die at Armageddon if I move in with my father. Anyone that knows me realizes that trying to fear me into something or give me an ultimatum is not going to have a good outcome, right? It's just not. It's in my personality to buck that sort of thing. I brought up the faith of Timothy and that God was strong enough to keep me, and that there was a kingdom hall near my father's house down in Virginia. After an hour or so of running in circles with the Jehovah's Witness elders trying to scare me, and me, the 16-year-old child, I was a child, and I was refuting them with scripture. They realize that they cannot scare me or use fear to bend me to their will. These JW elders had a backup. They then told me that they had been in touch with my stepfather and that he had brought a charge against me. He, my stepfather, told them that I had a problem with masturbation because I took too long in the bathroom and that I would come out with bodybuilding magazines. It had been a year since I had lived with my stepfather at that point, and my stepfather claimed that the magazines had pictures of scantily clad women sometimes. Therefore, I had an addiction to masturbation. It's a bodybuilding magazine. Of course, there's going to be people that are showing off their body. That no big surprise there, right? All right, so the JW elders threatened me with a public reproof and told me that I had to tell them all the details of my masturbation addiction. I admitted to nothing throughout the next hour and a half of them interrogating me. Now, on a side note, let's be honest. I admitted to nothing, but I was a 16-year-old young man into bodybuilding with an incredibly high testosterone level. Of course, I was jerking off. I mean, well, I'm not going to tell them that, right? I already tell they're on a witch hunt. So I told the JW elders that I was leaving. all of their attempted intimidation came to not a thing. And the crazy thing is that they tried to use my pedophile stepfather. They tried to use my rapist, the man that had been molesting me and raping me himself, and had been masturbating on me. They tried to use that to attempt to scare me into staying with a threat of public reproof for masturbation. What a threesome of despicable human beings these JW elders are. And they don't even realize what they're doing. They're blinded company men. They're I mean, that's not the work of God. In that situation, that's the devil coming out, isn't it? So at the end of September of '95, I moved in with my real father and my stepmother. I'd made my escape finally. I'd been told my whole life that the two of them were pure evil and liars in every despicable thing that one can think of. It took me many months to realize they were who they appeared to be, unlike the JW cult members. I could not ask for, nor can I imagine, a better father and mother, and that is 100% true. I know everyone says that about their father, right? But I didn't grow up with the man. I'd been led to believe my whole life he was evil, and I can tell you a little bit about him in the future. But the man is amazing. Um, if he was Catholic and believed in that sort of thing, he'd be up for a saint nomination, I think. And so it's that's how I got my escape there. I'm kind of a little bit lost here on what to do next with my notes, but um, I'll kind of go over also more of my life. I kind of read like a book. I've been told. Um, I've kind of have a lot of experiences in life that not many people have had, and I've lived a full life. I mean, I'm only 40 this year, and I've definitely had a full life. And it was great to get away from the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses. So anyway, I guess I'm just going to end this video out, and I'll get another one put up pretty soon here. And thank you guys for watching. If anyone has any questions, I mean, feel free to contact me. Write me a note if you want. Um, I know I'm just starting. I'm brand new to this, but I do want to help any way I can. Um, it's just who I am. Like my YouTube handle, Guardian Fury. I've always been a guardian. Uh, the whole thing about using the only thing I had at my disposal to help life get better for my mother and my sisters. Um, you know, that was the only way I could guard. I could try to make life better for my family at the time. And to this day, I definitely am a protector, and it makes me furious to have really researched the depth of depravity of the JW organization, which I didn't do until this past year. It's been about a year maybe. I had left. I knew it wasn't. I knew it wasn't the truth. I knew it wasn't truth. I knew it was a false religion at the age of 16. I proved it wrong biblically at the age of 16, and I just assumed it was like other false religions. I didn't look into it past that. I left and never looked back. Right. Uh, I did go to a meeting or two once I moved in with my father and my real mother, my stepmother, who's mom. I did go to a couple meetings, and what I saw there just made me sick. Like there were people. There's one girl in high school. I ended up going to finish out in public high school, which was good. It was what I needed. I needed to be able to integrate into society, to learn how to be a real boy, if you will, right? Not Pinocchio. And so this girl, there's one other girl that was a Jehovah's Witness, and in the high school I was going to, it was a pretty large high school north of Richmond, Virginia, and she was bragging. One thing she was bragging about how she looked down on everyone else in there and just kept to herself, and how horrible these people were. And it was, and she was encouraged to do this. She was encouraged to look down on all these worldly people. And that's something I'd been really, really having an issue with for that past year, was how the Jehovah's Witnesses look at people outside of their cult, and like how I was told my father was the worst of the worldly people, right? And they completely miss Jesus. They don't understand. They claim to follow the Bible. They claim to be footstep followers of Christ, yet they're the biggest Pharisees you ever met in your life. They don't get it. Jesus would have been hanging out with all the worldly people. That's who he would have been with. They just don't see it. It's amazing. I'll just end that for now. I'll come back with some more stuff. These are long videos. I probably need to try to work on making them shorter. But thanks for watching if you made it this far, and I'll see you soon.